Hey everybody, welcome to VerifiedInvesting.com. My name is Gareth Soloway, Chief Market Strategist here. In today's video, I want to focus on the XRP chart, taking a look at the key technical levels, both in the near term as well as the longer term. And again, this will give us a forecast, both near-term forecast and where XRP could go in the longer term. All right, so let's dive right into the chart here on XRP. And what we can see is, again, XRP today is down just a little bit, but that's not really important for this video. More than anything, we want to see what is going on. And one of the things that we're seeing here is basically consolidation, right? So from this big rally, which started in late July, kind of early July, right? This bigger move up, it has pulled back. Now you're getting a move up. Now it's pulling back. But notice how each move is less and less. And this is what we call the formation of a wedge pattern. And again, so the biggest move was here, then smaller move down, then even smaller move back up, and even smaller move down. Now, what is it? Why is this important? Well, basically, if we draw trend lines, we can start connecting short-term highs and lows. And again, very easily, we can draw a trend line down. Now, the reason why a downsloping trend line is important is that the more price hammers on the underbelly, the more likely the probabilities, I should say, increase of a break to the upside. All right. So essentially what you're looking at here on XRP is a chart that if it continues to hammer on this downsloping or descending trend line, eventually we should get a breakout. Right. And again, where would the breakout go? Well, first little minor resistance would be around 334, followed by 365. And that was your previous all-time high on XRP. Now, on the same front, we just can't look at the positives, right? And again, I know everyone always, especially fans of XRP, they say, oh, I just believe it's going up, so I'm just going to look at the positives. Well, a good investor or trader says, okay, well, if this is consolidation, where does it fail? Where do I have to start to be concerned that it could take a leg down? Now, again, remember, this is short term. So if you have your long-term thesis on XRP, that's fine. Short term doesn't really matter. It means it could dump an extra 20% or so, but overall, it doesn't matter a whole lot if you're a very long-term hodler on XRP. All right, so one of the things I'm seeing here, folks, is notice right in this range. In fact, let me gather a little bit of a zone here. And what we see here is that essentially we have a zone of support on this XRP chart, which again, you can see the high here, pierced it, but then reversed, kind of kissed the underbelly, got close, tagged it again. And then even right here, you can see it kind of went up, pulled back, paused, and then got its breakout. And then notice how when it pulled back, this again was resistance, resistance, finally a breakout. Now it becomes support. And so essentially this wedge pattern has a horizontal baseline to it with a downsloping or descending trend line. And again, the breakout obviously would occur on a break of this trend line here versus a breakdown. You do not, if you're an XRP holder, you would not want to see XRP get below basically 275 to 265, this 10-cent range right there. If it does, and we always want to look at the negatives, not just the positives, folks, if it does break below that, then you start saying, okay, where are my recent lows? And again, very clearly here, we have a trend line connecting these recent lows, right? The low pivot from April 7th, which was obviously the Liberation Day sell-off lows in the overall stock market, and this secondary low here on June 22nd. In addition, we have a secondary trend line, which is very close, and this gives us a support range right in here. You can see connecting those levels. So basically, support would then become 230 to about the 220 level, $2.30 to 220. And that would only be relevant if you take out this support zone here. All right. So again, we now have a short term, and everything I've done here is short term. What's my short term? My short term is the next few weeks to the next month, basically, of outlook on XRP. And XRP right now, I would say in general would be a slight bullish bias. It hasn't broken out, but again, big move with consolidation, a wedge pattern, essentially a flag pattern. You can see this would be your flag pole, and this is your consolidation. This would in general be a positive chart setup, a bullish chart setup, although I'm not overly bullish, but it is slightly bullish on that, assuming this zone holds right here. Now, let's erase these lines. We're going to zoom out on the chart. Let's even go to our weekly chart here. Let's go back to the daily. I just want to zoom out a little bit more. Now, one of the things I want to take a look at is where this was trading at the 2021 high. So the bull market of 2021, it peaked at about $1.95. It then soared to this level here in January. This was on the president's basically winning the election and being inaugurated and his positive crypto stance. And then we even had this another bull run here, which took us into July, mid-July of this year. Now, one of the interesting things is, well, why did we know, or what told us that we could have topped out at this 365 level? Well, take your bull market high, which obviously was a major pivot high, connect it to your high in January and extend that out and look at what you get. You basically get the high right there. Very cool to see that, guys. Look at that, right into there, and that's your level. So on a longer term basis, if we can, and again, now I'm talking mid to longer term. So if we can get the bull breakout on XRP above that trend line that we just looked at on a zoomed in chart of the daily, then you have to think that the next level of resistance will be this line. Now, why would this line be resistance? Well, just because history has shown us that boom, boom, and right now, boom, right? Pullbacks. So it's not up to me to determine whether or not a level gets broken above or not. It's more to determine where is support and resistance. And right now, resistance is right around $3.63 to $3.65 over the next multiple months, right? So if we get that breakout, that would be where you would start to say, okay, now I need to watch to see, can the bulls push it through this area? In addition, you also have double top right there, right? So if we did go up to that 365 level, that would be piercing this trend line and also a double top. So that's your next point. Now, let's just talk about if this does really continue to rally, where could this go? And by the way, just one other thing that's super, super cool. This is your high from 2018 January. So that basically the bull market ended in late 2017, early 2018. Look at how this trend line has come back to play again. Right? Look, high here and right there. I mean, isn't that incredible? It's just, I mean, that's so cool to me to think that your high going back to 2021, 2018, January, is actually still playing a role in XRP here and here. And so what this does tell us, by the way, is that, yes, you have this bullish consolidation on XRP, assuming it holds the levels we talked about, basically 275 to 265. But again, there is some resistance up here that must be conquered. The bulls need to get through this. If you get through this, you have open sky. There's blue sky above. There is not a whole lot of near-term resistance. And again, to figure out where resistance is, that's a little trickier, right? Because again, we don't have any, this would be uncharted territory up in this range. Now we can make some speculative assessments. We can say maybe it's a measured move, right? So a measured move in technical analysis is basically where we take the last bull run that leads into the current consolidation. So from here to here, and we say, okay, this is consolidating. Let's say this is your low. And again, I don't know if it will be, but if it is, we basically take that same distance. And again, you always take the low of the pullback, and this would give me a $4.50, essentially a $4.50 $4.50 target on XRP. Okay. Now, again, like always, we have to look at the bear case, right? So we already looked at the bear case in the near term. What would be the bear case in the longer term? All right. So let's put this trend line back in. This is the one we were looking at again with this trend line, right? These two trend lines gave us that little zone of basically 230 to 220-ish, give or take, right? If this breaks, and look at all this consolidation, so this should be massive support. I would even be a buyer in this range. If you get a flush here, I would be a buyer. Granted, you could keep a stop underneath just in case. But this, I mean, again, look at all of these lows going right across. It's right in that same vicinity too. So there should be a ton of support there. But let's just say it does break. Then you start looking at your low pivot, your lowest point of this bull run, which was right here at 161. That would be your next support below. All right. So again, the idea here is we have to make ourselves understand both the bullish levels as well as the bearish levels. What's the support? What's the resistance? Near term, the bias, and again, biases can change, but XRP near term has a slight bullish bias, but it needs to break out. I would say you'd want to see that breakout in the next couple weeks. If you don't, I'd start to get nervous. All right. If it breaks out, we talked about where it could go, both in the near term, which would be back to about 360, 365. Longer term, maybe as high as 450. And again, longer term to me is not like a lot of long term investors, right? They think, oh, long term is 10 years. No, no, no. Long term for me as a swing trader is like 6 months to a year, right? I mean, that's probably long term there. But that's your upside angle. If you break your key levels on the downside, right? And again, let me just look back. We're talking like 375 to 365. Then you're looking at 320-ish, 330 to 320. And if that breaks, that's problematic. You're probably headed to 163. And so again, let's talk here. Near term and even midterm right now remains slightly bullish. But if you start breaking these supports, get defensive very, very quickly. And I would encourage you to focus on not just the XRP news. A lot of people just in crypto, they want to focus on just XRP or just Solana or just this. You have to be more ethereal. You have to look at the whole picture. Charts and price action are driven by money in the system as well as sentiment and emotion. Sentiment and emotion right now is relatively high in XRP, in not so much Solana, medium Solana, but definitely Bitcoin and Ethereum. Keep an eye on the stock market. I know people don't want to hear that, but you got to keep an eye on it because the stock market is the biggest market that retail investors are invested in. Therefore, it's a great gauge of sentiment. And if sentiment starts to falter and we see the stock market start to cascade lower, that could be problematic for crypto. And then you start to want to get a little bit more defensive as well. All right. I hope you have enjoyed this video, guys. I really try to deep dive into these charts to give you not just near term, but longer term, but also the educational nuggets I want to drop to you guys so you guys can essentially elevate your game. And really the idea here is that I'm a true believer that any retail investor, and really I'm a retail investor, I'm just an advanced retail investor, but retail investors can compete and beat institutions. You can do it. You just got to learn the charts, learn to control emotion, learn human psychology. These are the keys to really being advanced and as a trader and investor. Have a great one, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Take care.